Welcome to The Explainer. Most of us think of conflict at work as, well, something to run away from, right? But what if that's completely wrong? Today, we're going to dig into where that conflict actually comes from, and more importantly, how you can flip those inevitable disagreements into your team's biggest asset.
All right, let's kick things off with an idea that might seem a little backwards. Think about it. Have you ever been in a meeting and just bit your tongue, you had a different opinion, but you didn't want to rock the boat, you just wanted to be nice? Well, this quote right here says that when a whole company does that, this culture of extreme niceness actually strangles the very debates that lead to breakthrough ideas and smarter decisions.
And this really lays out the two sides of the coin perfectly. On one hand, yeah, conflict can be a total disaster. It ramps up stress, causes people to quit, and just pulls teams apart. But if you handle it right, it actually does the opposite. It makes for better decisions, helps everyone adapt to change, and believe it or not, can make a team even tighter. So the goal here isn't to get rid of conflict. That's impossible. The goal is to tap into its productive, positive side.
Okay, so the big question is, how do we get all that good stuff without the bad? How do we get the benefits and dodge the bullets? Well, it all starts with one simple idea. Not all conflict is the same. There are basically two flavors of it, and telling them apart, well, that changes everything. So here they are. On one side, you've got task conflict. This is the good stuff, the constructive kind. It's all about the work itself, the ideas, the logic, the best way to get things done. It's debating the what and the how. But on the other side, you've got relationship conflict. And this is where things get ugly. This isn't about the work anymore. It becomes personal. It's about who is right, not what is right. And that just makes people defensive, it kills trust, and it grinds everything to a halt.
So the whole game is trying to keep disagreements in that task box and stop them from spilling over into the relationship box. And how do we do that? Well, it boils down to these three things. You need emotional intelligence on the team so people can manage their feelings. You need real team development so people actually know and trust each other. And maybe the most important one, you need psychological safety. That's the feeling that you can speak up, challenge an idea, or even fail without getting punished for it. If you can build that kind of environment, you can have all the healthy debate in the world without things getting personal.
All right, so now we know the what, the difference between good and bad conflict, but let's dig a little deeper. Let's talk about the why. Why do we disagree in the first place? Because if you can understand where it's coming from, you're halfway to solving it.
This model right here shows you the whole journey of a disagreement from start to finish. And you can see it all kicks off with that first box on the left, the sources. Those sources then color how we see things and feel about them, which drives how we act, and that leads to the final outcome. The big takeaway here is that trying to fix a conflict when everyone's already yelling, that's too late. The real magic happens when you go all the way back to the beginning and tackle those root causes.
And here they are, the big six. You can trace almost any argument you've ever had at work back to one of these things. Seriously, think about it. Sales wants to ship fast to hit their numbers, but engineering wants to slow down to make sure it's stable. Boom, incompatible goals. Or maybe two people are fighting over a project because nobody's really sure who's in charge. That's ambiguous rules. Once you start seeing these patterns, you can't unsee them. And that's the first step to actually fixing the problem instead of just the symptoms.
So we know where conflict comes from, but what do you do when it's happening right in front of you? Well, the trick isn't to have just one go-to move. The real secret is to have a whole toolkit of different ways to handle things so you can pick the right tool for the right job. And this grid here lays out those 5 tools beautifully. Your choice basically comes down to balancing 2 things. First, that up and down axis, assertiveness. That's all about how much you need to get your way. Then you've got the side-to-side axis, cooperativeness. That's about how much you're willing to help the other person get their way. Where you fall on these 2 scales decides which style you're going to use. Okay, let's start in the top left corner with forcing. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's the my way or the highway approach. You're going all in on getting what you want, and you're not too worried about the other person. Now, this sounds bad, but it isn't always. It's actually super important when you need a fast decision and there's no time to debate, like in a real emergency. But you got to use this one carefully, because it can definitely ruffle some feathers. All right, now let's jump down to the bottom left, avoiding. This is low on getting your way and low on helping them. But listen, this isn't about being a pushover. It's actually a tactical retreat. You pull this card when, honestly, the issue just isn't a big deal, or maybe when everyone's way too emotional to have a real conversation. Sometimes the smart move is just to step back and live to fight another day. Over in the bottom right corner, we have yielding.
Here, you're basically saying, you know what, you can have this one. You're high on cooperation, but low on pushing your own agenda. This is the perfect move when you realize, hey, maybe I was wrong. Or when the issue is no big deal to you, but it means the world to the other person. Think of it as making a deposit in the relationship bank. You're building up goodwill for a time when the stakes are higher.
And smack dab in the middle, you've got compromising. This is the classic let's meet halfway, right? It's the practical choice. It's what you do when you're in a rush. Both sides have about the same amount of power, and getting something done is better than getting nothing done. The reality is, no one's going to be jumping for joy, but everyone walks away with something they can live with.
And last but definitely not least, up in the top right, we have problem solving. Now this is the holy grail. It's high on getting what you want and high on helping them get what they want. It completely changes the game from me versus you to us versus the problem. Look, it's not easy. It takes time. It takes trust. But it's the only approach that gets you to a true win-win, where you invent a solution that's way better than what either of you thought up on your own.
So, choosing one of those styles is all about how you react when a conflict pops up. But what if you want to be more proactive? What about when you need to sit down with someone and actually hammer out an agreement? Well, for that, we need to talk about the art of negotiation. So, what even is negotiation when you break it down? It's pretty simple, really. It's just the conversation that happens when two people need something from each other, but they don't agree on how to get there. They're trying to find a way to make a deal that works for both of them.
And any successful deal happens inside something called the bargaining zone. This picture shows it perfectly. See, you've got a line in the sand, your resistance point. That's the absolute worst deal you're willing to take. And they have their own line in the sand, the most they're willing to give. If those two lines overlap, that little space in the middle, that's where a deal can happen. That's the zone.
But here's the thing about power in a negotiation. It doesn't come from how much you want the deal. No way. Your real power comes from how good your options are if you don't make a deal. And that brings us to maybe the single most important idea in this entire explainer, your BATNA. It stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. It's your plan B. It's what you'll do if you get up from the table and walk away.
So let's just let that sink in for a second. Your BATNA, that's your power source. If you have a really strong plan B, you can go into that negotiation with total confidence, holding out for what you actually deserve. But if your BATNA is weak, or you don't even have one, then you're basically at their mercy. Knowing your BATNA isn't just a nice to have. It's what gives you the courage to say no thanks and walk away.
So that's our look at conflict and negotiation. And the next time you're heading into a big conversation, I'm talking asking for a raise, pitching a new project, whatever it is, don't just focus on what you want. Stop, take a minute, and ask yourself this one critical question. What's my plan B if this doesn't work out? Because knowing your BATNA changes the entire game.